There is a specific kind of power that most people spend their entire lives chasing but will never actually obtain. Not because they are not capable, but because no one ever taught them the hidden rules of human nature. You move through your days believing that honesty, kindness, and good intentions will protect you. You assume that because you would not harm others, others would not harm you. But deep down, a part of you already knows this isn't how reality functions. You've felt it. That subtle unease after someone's comment. That nagging suspicion that a friend's support had strings attached. That moment you realize someone knew exactly which button to push to get a reaction from you. And if you can't yet see who's pulling those strings, that's exactly why this information will change everything. Centuries ago, a political philosopher named Machiavelli studied the raw mechanics of power. He concluded that most people are so consumed by their immediate wants approval, comfort, distraction, that they become easy prey for those who understand how to manipulate those desires. He wrote that anyone skilled in deception will always find someone willing to be deceived, and too often, that someone is the person staring back at you in the mirror. Not because you lack intelligence, not because you're inherently weak, but because the system, your upbringing, and society trained you to be transparent, while a small percentage of people trained themselves to read you like a book. Here is the reality that stings. The world does not soften because you become softer. It becomes more hazardous precisely when you remain blind to its undercurrents. Right now, whether you realize it or not, people around you are cataloging your data. They note what makes you laugh nervously, what makes your jaw tighten, what makes you seek their validation. They observe how quickly you forgive betrayal, how easily you are impressed by status, how fast you attach to anyone showing you warmth, and how deeply you fear being excluded. Every vulnerability you display becomes a lever they can pull. This material you're engaging with right now, this specific sequence of insights, will strip away that naivety and reconstruct your internal architecture into something formidable, illegible, and unreachable. Because becoming unreachable isn't about freezing your emotions solid, it's about mastering their flow. Mastery over what you broadcast. Mastery over what disturbs your peace. Mastery over the image you project. Mastery over the chaos that used to rage inside your skull unchecked. Machiavelli distilled it perfectly. Whoever controls the surface controls the outcome. Once this law integrates into your nervous system, no one will ever pull your strings again. Not your partner, not your parents, not your supervisor, not your so-called best friend, not your rival. You will evolve into the individual people instinctively know they cannot deceive, cannot provoke, cannot fracture, and cannot anticipate. Your presence will shift from ordinary to undeniable. Quiet moments will carry weight. Your composure will generate intrigue. Your consciousness will become a vault with no entry points. And when the environment realizes it can no longer trick you, it stops attempting. If this resonates, type armor of awareness in the comments. Claim that mindset right now. Listen closely, because the foundation of everything that follows rests on one ability most people never develop. The ability to watch yourself think. Machiavelli argued that an effective leader isn't the one with the most information, but the one who notices everything, especially about themselves. And this is the exact spot where your entire shift begins with internal surveillance. The average human drifts through existence sleepwalking, eyes physically open but mentally unconscious. They emote before evaluating. They vocalize before comprehending. They condemn before investigating. Because they lack self-understanding, outsiders can understand them better than they understand themselves. A fool isn't defined by low IQ. A fool is defined by emotional predictability. But someone who monitors their own thought patterns becomes inscrutable, unprovocable, undeceivable. Picture two versions of yourself. Version A fires back instantly, voice raised, feelings exposed, completely readable. Version B pauses, scans the internal landscape, and observes his own cognition like a general observing troop movements from a hill. Which one is easier to manipulate? Version B, without question. Self-monitoring isn't meditation hype. It isn't spiritual bypassing. It isn't false positivity. It's raw cognitive dominance. It's detecting the heat of anger before it boils over. It's recognizing when someone's phrasing is scratching an old wound before you reply. It's knowing your own fragility so intimately that no outsider can weaponize it. Manipulators thrive because they spot what you don't see in yourself. But when you illuminate those corners first, their advantage evaporates. Machiavelli taught that a ruler must perpetually study human psychology. Yet the primary subject of that study must be yourself. If you understand why you crave external validation, why rejection sends you spiraling, why your mind loops on hypotheticals, why you bond too quickly, then no one can hijack those circuits. When you observe yourself, you create separation, a buffer zone between stimulus and response. That buffer is where your sovereignty lives. This is why even skilled emotional manipulators collapse when facing someone genuinely self-aware. Toolkit guilt induction, time pressure, flattery, confusion slides off you, because you recognize the mechanism while everyone else is drowning in the moment. You perceive trajectories before they materialize. You detect concealed agendas behind warm smiles. You register fluctuations in tone, energy, and motive. People may begin labeling you distant, unreadable, detached. Good. It means they've lost access to your control panel. Self-observation breeds unpredictability. Unpredictability breeds influence, and influence makes you untouchable. So starting now, train your awareness to track your awareness. Every time you feel a spike of emotion, pause. Every time you catch yourself reacting on autopilot, rewind mentally. Every time someone attempts to steer you, internally step back and observe the interaction as if you're watching from the ceiling. That simple act of witnessing strips manipulators of their power completely. If you internalize this first principle, everything else flows naturally. Most people equate strength with speaking, with arguing their case, proving their point, over-explaining their position. But Machiavelli recognized a deeper truth. The person who speaks less actually controls more. Silence is not merely the absence of noise. Silence is the presence of command. The average person talks because silence terrifies them. They dread awkward pauses. They dread being misunderstood. They dread losing their social image. And that dread forces them to reveal their strategies, emotions, and vulnerabilities long before any question is asked. Manipulators adore chatty individuals because chatterers spill everything without realizing it. But the quiet person? They disclose nothing while absorbing everything. Silence acts as armor because it shields your interior. No one can distort your words if you offer none. No one can anticipate your next move if you never declare your plans. No one can influence your choices if you keep your objectives confidential. When you master stillness, you become indecipherable, a sealed manuscript others desperately want to read but cannot access. Yet silence also functions as a fence. It exerts pressure on the other participant. When you withhold immediate response, people begin exposing themselves. They attempt to fill the void. They modulate their approach. They unveil their true aims. Some even become unsettled because your quietness forces them to face their own uncertainties. Your silence becomes the reflection they're afraid to gaze into. Machiavelli wrote that a prudent person should disclose nothing until disclosure serves their purpose. This is essential. Your quietness must be intentional, not timid, not insecure, not passive. Intentional quietness means you select your moments. You observe initially, respond subsequently. Do you let others display their hand before you commit your chips? This is how commanders, monarchs, and master thinkers navigate conflicts, both external and internal. When someone tries to make you feel guilty, remain quiet. When someone demands an instant answer, remain quiet. When someone aims to insult or agitate you, remain quiet. Because quietness forces the aggressor to expose their genuine motive. Their hidden irritation surfaces. Their emotional instability becomes visible. Meanwhile, you stay composed, unreachable. Quietness also heightens your perception. When your mouth stops, your senses start. You begin catching details others miss. Posture, vocal inflection, fleeting facial expressions, narrative contradictions. You start hearing what remains unspoken. This is what provides your decisive edge. A deceiver cannot fool a quiet observer. And never forget this, humans fear what they cannot decode. When they cannot forecast your emotions, when they cannot extract your weaknesses, when they cannot sway your decisions, they begin deferring to your presence. Even subconsciously. Your quietness generates mystery. Mystery generates respect. Respect generates influence. And that influence makes you unreachable. The vast majority never achieve mental invincibility because they remain prisoners of perception, shackled not by metal but by the judgments of others. Machiavelli recognized this psychological trap with precision. The instant someone can shape how you view yourself, they can direct your behavior. And that is manipulation's origin point. Every deceiver, every egotist, every strategic operator employs the same method. They target your self-concept. They make you hunger for acknowledgement. They make you dread criticism. They make you question your value. Why? Because someone seeking validation follows a predictable pattern. A predictable mind is easily steered like a vessel with someone else at the helm. But when you detach from opinions, genuinely detach, you become ungovernable. Detachment isn't arrogance. Detachment isn't apathy. It's the capacity to stand firm in your own identity, unaffected by either applause or accusation. Most misunderstand this. They believe only negative feedback poses risk, but praise carries equal danger. Compliments can function as restraints. Approval can function as bait. When others know you crave recognition, they can tug you wherever they wish. Consider this. If someone's words can elevate your mood, their words can also devastate you. If someone's validation lifts you, their rejection can annihilate you. This is why Machiavelli advised leaders to construct their authority internally, not from public adoration, not from reputation, not from the masses. The more robust your internal foundation, the weaker external influence becomes. Detachment gives you that unshakable core. When you detach, you stop emotionally convulsing at every opinion hurled your way. You stop justifying yourself to those undeserving of your explanation. You stop defending every decision you make. You start moving differently with a tranquility that baffles those who depend on your insecurity. Detachment creates psychological distance. You observe everything without ingesting anything. You hear criticism, but it doesn't wound you. You hear praise, but it doesn't intoxicate you. You hear gossip, but it doesn't disturb you. Your mind becomes a fortress, soundproof to noise. And do you know what occurs when you reach this level? Manipulators forfeit their power. Bullies lose their effect. Pretenders lose their sway. False friends lose their grip, because none of them can access your emotional core anymore. People may start saying you've transformed. They may call you colder, more confident, harder to reach. But what they actually mean is this: they can no longer govern you through their judgments. Detachment makes you unreachable because it severs the world's hold on your self-worth. You cease living for ovation and start living for direction. From that moment forward, no one can deceive you because no one can corrupt your internal compass. Machiavelli understood that an individual capable of regulating their reactions can shape entire scenarios without uttering a syllable. Most equate power with physical strength, intellectual capacity, or social standing. But genuine power originates from emotional regulation. A manipulator's primary wish is that you respond without reflection. They want your feelings to erupt, your reasoning to cloud, your choices to become impulsive. Because the instant you lose self-command, you surrender control of the situation to them. This is why emotional reactivity is the most accessible gateway into your psyche. But once you learn to govern your responses, that gateway seals forever. Examine this. When someone insults you, what do they anticipate? Rage. When someone pressures you, what do they anticipate? Anxiety. When someone deceives you, what do they anticipate? Disorientation. When someone provokes you, what do they anticipate? Defensiveness. If you deliver exactly what they expect, you become predictable. And predictable individuals are easily manipulated. But the person who responds slowly, calmly, and deliberately becomes impossible to exploit. That's where your evolution targets. Response regulation is the skill of selecting your emotional reaction rather than permitting the emotion to select for you. It's the capacity to remain centered even when someone attempts to disrupt your equilibrium. It's the discipline to pause before answering, to evaluate before expressing, to observe before engaging. This pause is your tactical advantage. It grants you clarity while the other person exposes their agenda. Manipulators despise those who don't react. Your calmness disarms them. Your stillness aggravates them. Your neutrality reveals their inadequacy. When they cannot provoke you, they lose leverage. When they cannot intimidate you, they lose confidence. When they cannot emotionally unbalance you, they lose authority. Machiavelli recognized that the strongest individual is the one who cannot be baited. He cautioned leaders against responding from pride, fear, or fury. Because emotional choices generate catastrophe. That regulated responses multiply your impact. People begin adjusting their tone when addressing you. They become cautious with their language. They hesitate before opposing you. Your mere presence alters a room's atmosphere. And here's the hidden insight. Response regulation is not muteness. Response regulation is timing. You answer when it serves you, not when they expect you. Your speech gains weight because it's no longer impulsive. It's intentional. Every word you utter lands harder because it emerges from clarity, not chaos. Once you master this ability, something significant occurs. Conflicts simplify. Arguments shorten. People treat you with increased regard. And manipulators vanish on their own because nothing unsettles a deceiver more than a composed, illegible, emotionally disciplined consciousness. Machiavelli held that if you can perceive someone's underlying intent, you can foresee their conduct long before they act. And this is where the majority fail. They attend to language instead of observing motivation. But language deceives. Motivation doesn't. Anyone can utter appropriate phrases. Anyone can simulate concern. Anyone can perform loyalty, kindness, respect, or support when advantageous. But humans cannot unseal their fundamental purpose indefinitely. If you intend to become mentally unreachable and genuinely immune to deception, you must learn to interpret beneath the surface. Begin by accepting this principle. People reveal their intent through patterns, not promises. A manipulator will declare, "I'm always here for you," yet vanish during your need. A pretender will behave warmly, yet smile slightly too broadly at your misfortune. A narcissist will elevate you today, then diminish you tomorrow. A self-absorbed person will extend assistance, but only when something returns to them. Words distract, patterns expose. Machiavelli advised rulers to evaluate people by their actions over duration, not by their statements in isolation. If you adopt this rule, you will never be deceived twice. Observe how someone behaves when frustrated, when envious, when failing, when denied what they want. These instances expose their authentic motivation more vividly than any admission. Intentions also surface through micro-behaviors, the fractional hesitation before someone congratulates you, the subtle vocal shift when you experience achievement, the rapid deflection when you pose a direct inquiry, the forced smile when you discuss future aspirations. These minor cracks in their facade are invaluable. They indicate who genuinely aligns with your trajectory and who anticipates your decline. And here's the deeper reality. Most people lack effective poker faces, to simply never learn to pay attention. Seek emotional inconsistencies. Seek abrupt mood changes surrounding your accomplishments. Seek selective recollection. Seek contradictions between their statements and their actions. Seek the energy behind their eyes. That's where intention resides. When you train yourself to perceive motives instead of hearing justifications, everything transforms. False friends can no longer simulate around you. Manipulators begin avoiding you. Concealed adversaries expose themselves through nervous responses. Opportunists recognize you see through their appeal, and trustworthy individuals become immediately recognizable. Perceiving intention grants you psychological X-ray vision. Where others perceive words, you perceive strategy. Where others perceive drama, you perceive purpose. Where others are fooled, you remain 3 steps ahead. Once you master this, people cannot mislead you. They cannot exploit your blind spots because you don't respond to their sentences. You respond to their actual motivation. This is how you become impossible to deceive. Let this settle deeply within you, because everything you've absorbed thus far converges on one essential truth. The strongest person is the one whose mind cannot be accessed, disturbed, or reprogrammed by anyone. Machiavelli comprehended human psychology at a depth most never approach. He understood that society ultimately rewards the quiet thinkers, the composed strategists, the emotionally disciplined individuals who navigate turmoil without losing their core. You are becoming that person. By monitoring your own cognition, you've eliminated the entry points manipulators exploit. By mastering quietness, you've removed their ability to forecast you. By detaching from judgments, you've shattered every chain they attempt to fasten on your identity. By regulating responses, you have preserved your authority where it belongs internally. By perceiving intention, you've grown too aware to ever be misled again. This is what mentally unreachable genuinely signifies. You navigate existence with clarity. You sense hazard before it materializes. You register when someone's energy shifts. You identify masks without requiring explanation. You comprehend motives without hearing excuses. People may label you cold. They may insist you've transformed. They may whisper that you're distant, harder to influence, harder to satisfy. Good. That indicates your evolution is functioning. A consciousness like yours becomes a fortress, constructed not of stone but of awareness, defended not by weapons but by discipline, powered not by ego but by comprehension. When you attain this level, no deceiver, no manipulator, no pretender can reach inside and distort your emotions. You become illegible, unshakable, unbreakable. This is the commencement of your influence. And from here you ascend differently.